Today we are continuing our Futures Thinking 101 series by looking at another Futures Thinking and Foresight tool. This one is known as policy stress testing, sometimes also known as wind tunneling. So policy stress testing is a crucial tool in futures thinking, and it allows policymakers to evaluate the robustness of their strategies against a range of potential future scenarios. And it helps in identifying weaknesses and areas for improvement in policy plans. Why use policy stress testing? The primary goal is to ensure that policies remain effective regardless of how future conditions might change. And it helps in preparing for unexpected changes and ensuring that policies are adaptable. The approach, we begin by developing a set of plausible scenarios that reflect different future conditions, what the world might look like. We clearly define the policy options that we want to test. We evaluate each policy option against each scenario to see how well it performs. And then we use those findings to adapt and improve policy strategies. Scenarios, they should be based on critical uncertainties that could impact the policy area. And they should be diverse enough to cover a broad spectrum of potential futures, from optimistic to challenging. First step is to introduce the policy to your working group, your volunteers who are taking part in this exercise. We want to remind them of the scoping question, which is essentially reminding the participants what they're there to do and what they aren't there to do. It can be quite easy for these exercises to go down a rabbit hole that has really nothing to do with what the primary aim of the session is. Then we introduce the specific policy options that are being tested. We want to check that the participants understand the policy and its objectives clearly. And it's okay at this stage to ask them to come up with new policy options that might appear to be beneficial in one or more of the upcoming scenarios. Next, we test that policy against the different scenarios. We determine whether the policy is robust, in which case it works well regardless of the outcome, or at least in a majority of the different scenarios. Whether it's redundant, which is unnecessary and not likely to work, or whether it's okay but needs a bit of work, needs some tuning to fit each scenario. This helps understand which policies are versatile and which need adjustments, and which ones really can't be tweaked and should be scrapped and start with something else. Again, we want to encourage the participants to be prepared to explain why they've made the decision. Next step is to take their feedback. Most commonly, we use a matrix to organise this. There's an example of one on the screen from the Government Futures Toolkit. As you can see, it takes what can be quite complex results and feedback and presents it in an easy to understand, at a glance style. We use this thinking about the impacts of possible futures to develop policy or strategic initiatives and to make them more robust. A complex policy and its associated plans might need several iterations to provide dependable results. So, like with a lot of these tools, don't think of wind tunneling, policy stress testing as a one-time, one and done deal, but instead think of it as an ongoing process and expect to run it several times. Again, as with some of the other videos, I find it particularly useful if we go through an example, and this is a particularly good one regarding developing scenarios. This is Wireless 2030. You can find it by Googling that and looking on the UK government website. Brief there. So this report was about looking at the evidence around demand for wireless connectivity and the implications for delivery of wireless public services in 2030. So they got the great and the good from different sectors, different industries, government, telecoms, obviously, elderly care, transport, all sorts, and got them to come up with various different scenarios in their area of expertise, and then they combined them. And what they came up with was this. It's 4 scenarios. Slow progress is scenario A. So this is where late 4G infrastructure coverage has expanded, but the pace of the tech adoption has plateaued. This slowdown has provided space for companies to meet citizen demand in a more conscientious and inclusive way. And those people, those members of the public who have opted out digital living, aren't able to access key digital services. Scenario B is called unmet promises. Again, late 4G infrastructure coverage has expanded. This has fueled demand for advanced services and has set high expectations for access and delivery. However, innovation and commercialization challenges mean that the advanced 5G and 6G connectivity is out of reach. Scenario C is us and them. Investment and innovation has been concentrated where the wealth is. Private companies set the agenda. Secure and high quality connectivity is the privilege of those who have the money and the required digital skills. This leads to an uneven patchwork of demand for new digital services across society. And finally, scenario D, seamless citizen. Citizens and industry embrace full digitization and demand facilitates the rollout of advanced network infrastructure throughout the UK. Essentially, this has unlocked opportunities for everyone, but it has high demands on people's data, energy, and mental health. So it's been a perfect technical rollout, but not without negative implications of its own. Having come up with these 4 scenarios, they were tested against, I've got 6 on the points there, 6 themes: culture, education, environment, healthcare, security, and transport. How would each one of those areas be impacted in each one of those scenarios? And there is an interesting graph, so not the easiest one to understand. Again, this is taken from the government report. It gives you some idea of what they were looking at when you compare each scenario to each other. So you can see seamless citizen is right on the outside, sort of high scores on capacity of connection, universality of coverage, and so on. But interestingly, it scored very low on resilience to the disruption of the digital system, and very low on average weekly screen time. Now, I believe actually what that means is it's low in a negative way, so there's too much screen time being spent. It's a low score in that sense. So I hope that helped, that case study. I do recommend looking at it. It's quite a hefty document, but has some very interesting insights and should help if you're looking to do any policy stress testing of your own. In conclusion, policy stress testing, also known as wind tunneling, helps organisations prepare for the future by ensuring that their strategies can withstand various potential developments or scenarios. And it shifts the focus from reacting to changes as they occur to proactively preparing for them. And obviously this is particularly key in areas such as government, where it's difficult to move quickly and make changes rapidly. It's far better to have anticipated them, at least to some degree, and have something in your pocket ready to deploy. So I hope this has been useful. Any questions, contact me directly or leave it in the comments below, and I will see you in the next video.